You know, I've been around for a while. Met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. So you just might think that there's not much that can take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories, science and things that amaze and confound me. Every single day, incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer. Others just defy logic.
Does the human mind possess powers beyond our comprehension? A housewife's psychic vision helps crack a major murder case.
I never wanted to be so wrong in my life.
Can crimes be solved with psychic power? A Californian man remembers every moment from every day of his life.
I can remember something so clearly, and then I go, wow, that was 41 years ago.
Is total recall possible? And a faith healer cures terminal disease with prayer. Is it a miracle or an amazing display of mind over matter?
If this was just placebo effect, you would find a handful of stories. You have thousands.
Yeah. It's a weird world, and I love it. The human brain. It's the most complex, advanced, and many would say, beautiful thing in nature. But how much do we know about it? Well, here are some facts for you. Did you know that it can process over 70,000 thoughts a day?
This is actually a cow brain, so it's more like 7 thoughts.
Or that it has over 10,000 miles of blood vessels?
Could you put it back, please? I need that.
Or that it doesn't feel pain?
Ouch. That hurts.
But these amazing abilities are really only the tip of the iceberg. The big question is, what don't we know about this incredible stuff? What else can it do? Oh, this is so great. Your brain generates between 10 and 23 watts of power, enough energy to power a light bulb. Impressive, huh?
This is pathetic.
Weird or what?
1980, Los Angeles, California. A massive police search grips the small suburban community of local housewife Etta Smith.
I think we were a little edgy because having things like that happen wasn't the everyday practice.
A hospital nurse is missing and feared dead. Astoundingly, Etta was about to find herself at the center of the investigation in the most bizarre way.
I made it a point to listen to the news during the day about this nurse missing. And the news said they were making a house-to-house search. At the moment that they said house-to-house search, everything went haywire. It was like I was seeing a movie. I began to see this area. I saw a trail, I saw a dirt path. I saw something white through the bushes, and I knew where it was.
For the first time in her life, Etta's had a psychic vision. She's convinced she knows where the nurse is. She's terrified and confused.
I didn't know what to think of it. There's some things that you just can't explain away. I'm arguing with myself. Should I go tell the police? They're gonna think I'm crazy. But what if she's there and she needs help?
Etta decides to drive to where she believes the nurse to be, a nearby canyon. Just being there seems to increase her newfound psychic abilities.
I see a big spray of dirt and tire marks, and I laid my hands into the tire prints, And as soon as I did, I could feel trauma. I mean, bad. By then, my heart is just fluttering, and I'm thinking, all I want to do is get out of here.
Fighting her fear, Etta follows her instinct.
Down the embankment, out the dirt path. I see something. There was white nurse's shoes. And I said, oh my God, it's her. I never wanted to be so wrong in my life. All I could think of is run, get out of here, get to the police.
When the police arrive, Etta's in for a huge shock. Instead of thanking her, they're convinced she must have had something to do with the murder. To her horror, she's arrested.
It was shocking. I cried till I couldn't cry anymore. Strip searched me, put me in a cell by myself. It was a nightmare.
After 4 days behind bars, Etta is finally released. Soon after, the killers, 3 local men, are arrested and convicted of rape and murder. Etta sues the police for false arrest, and after 6 years of legal battles, she wins. But even now, Etta struggles to make sense of the whole thing.
I don't know if it was her spirit that came and touched me to allow me to have the vision that I had. I don't know. It's one of those mysteries.
What did Etta Smith experience that day? Did she have a genuine psychic vision? Remarkably, many psychic detectives claim to solve crimes by means of mysterious insights. Is this possible?
I'd say there are 2 kinds of psychics. Those who have no psychic ability, but believe they do, and we call them fantasizers. The other type also has no psychic ability, they know they don't, and we call them charlatans.
Joe Nickel researches paranormal claims. He believes there's no such thing as psychic vision or extrasensory perception.
The history of ESP has been a history of self-deception, deception, wishful thinking, playing games with statistics, and not one person has been able to do anything meaningful.
But if psychic ability doesn't exist, how do psychic detectives achieve such amazing results?
The typical psychic engages in something we call retrofitting, or after-the-fact matching. You throw out some so-called clues. I'm getting water. I see a tall structure. And then the next thing you know, search party found the remains, and in comes the psychic saying, you know, I mentioned water, and that body was found near a creek or a pond or Riverside Drive or a water tower. Remember the tall structure I mentioned? And they get by with this. The number 7 was 7 miles out of town, or the sheriff's license plate has 2 7s in the number, or it's silly stuff. It doesn't help the police find the body, but it helps them later rationalize that somehow people have visions of a mystical nature.
Did Etta Smith just make a lucky guess?
It's not so simple that everyone who claims to be a psychic is a simple fraud. Some of course are. But some are simply self-deceived. They're what would generally be called a fantasy-prone personality. And they believe that what they imagine seems very real to them, and yet they have no special powers. The average psychic detective is no use to police. In my opinion, they provide no real evidence, they create false hope, and they have done it at the expense of promoting ignorance and superstition in our society, and driven unsuspecting people into the clutches of fortune tellers and other people who are engaging in magical thinking rather than rational thinking. What we need to do in our society is use the organ above the neck that's able to analyze evidence and make rational judgments, not to have feelings and intuitions and so forth that don't pan out.
I see a long life full of riches and a man named Stephen. Does that ring a bell? You know, many of us have been to palm readers, fortune tellers, people who claim to have amazing psychic abilities who are really nothing but fakes. But Etta Smith wasn't someone performing cheap tricks. She saw something in her mind even the police couldn't understand. Would she do it just for fame and fortune? Or is she truly psychic? No, Stephen? What about Harry?
Are psychics real? How did Etta Smith help solve a murder?
Etta definitely had a psychic vision. She had a clairvoyant vision.
A Los Angeles woman has a strange and sudden vision which helps police solve a murder. Was it a genuine psychic phenomenon? Popular psychic Tana Hoy thinks so.
When I first read Etta's story, my reaction that I had was, wow, this woman had a spontaneous psychic memory. I believe that the spirit was drawing her, pulling her to go and find her body.
If anyone can testify to how important psychic visions can be to the police, it's Hoy. He's helped investigators solve a double homicide and, while on live radio, predicted a terrorist attack 90 minutes before the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995.
A person can hear a word, a phrase, and it will awaken a psychic memory or a psychic vision within that person. She's awakened this vision, and she saw the canyon where the body was. That's an example of clairvoyant experience, clear seeing. And when she placed her hand in the tire tracks, she was making a direct connection with the energy imprint of the vehicle. Etta definitely had a psychic vision. She had a clairvoyant vision. Clairvoyance comes from the French word, and it means clear seeing. And she had visions inside her head that she could clearly see. So that would be definitely considered a psychic experience. I also would like to say everybody is psychic. Some people have learned to develop it and tap into it, and others haven't. Businessmen often talk about having hunches. Very common. Talk to a businessman, a stockbroker, some kind of investor. He'll say, oh, I just had a hunch. Or a businessman will say, well, I didn't hire that person. I just had a gut feeling it wasn't right. Women talk about their intuition. I just had an intuitive feeling that this was going to be like this. Or I had a sense that person wasn't telling me the truth. Have you ever felt someone was lying, or had a sense about something, or felt somebody wasn't a good person, or you could trust that person or you couldn't trust that person? You've had a psychic experience. We just don't call them psychic feelings, but anything that you're able to know, sense, or feel outside of your normal 5 senses is psychic in nature.
But if Etta's vision was for real, why didn't the police believe her?
We're going back to 1980. So back then, we didn't have the awareness of psychics that we have today. Today, we see TV shows and we see psychics on talk shows. I don't feel that she would have been arrested today.
So given their remarkable successes, should detectives add psychics to the force?
A lot of psychics, when they work with police departments, they don't do it for publicity. They do it to help and give back. So it happens a lot more than we ever hear about.
But did Etta Smith really see something with her mind? Psychology professor Tim Moore thinks not.
I think Etta may have overheard information in the community without fully processing it at the time that she acquired it. But later on, it registered and prompted her to go to the police.
Moore believes something in Etta's unconscious memory triggered what she thought was a psychic vision. Psychologists call it source misattribution.
Source misattribution, you have information to which you falsely attribute having acquired as a result of experience when in fact it's been suggested to you or provided to you by someone else.
Etta Smith wasn't the killer, so how could she have any idea where the body was?
My understanding is that The actual culprits were blabbermouths, and they talked about what they had done in their neighborhood, which was her neighborhood.
Could Etta's psychic vision be mistaken for random information she had nothing to do with?
If Etta's not concentrating on the information at the time that she's hearing it, because that's not the focus of her attention, the information nevertheless gets in, but she doesn't remember the source. At some later date, she hears information on the news that the police are looking for a missing body. She recollects somewhat hazily or without appreciating how she came by that information.
But how could Etta have known the exact location of the body, the precise road in the right canyon?
I believe she's familiar with the area, so the original information could easily have triggered a cognitive map. The canyon roads there, for example, are pretty distinctive. She may have intuited, just on the basis of what she overheard, where the body probably was. I mean, that's not a stretch.
Did the unexpected recall of a hidden memory lead Etta to the body? Or did she experience a genuine psychic event which helped solve a case the police could not? Whatever the truth, this story is most definitely weird. Or what?
You know, the human brain has been evolving for, hold it. How long has it been evolving?
2.5 million years.
903B, take 2, marker.
Action.
You know, the human brain has been evolving for 2.5 million years, but perhaps one of the greatest things that sets us apart from any other creature is the power. Oh, damn.
903B, take 3, marker.
And action.
You know, the human brain has been evolving for 2.5 million years, but perhaps one of the greatest things that sets us apart from any other creature is the power of our memory.
Yay!
Oh, come on. Where are my keys? Damn. Oh, wow.
They say that everyone has a special talent. In Bob Petrella's case, that's certainly true. But he possesses something so special, it sets him apart from the rest of humankind.
The reaction kind of varies. A lot of people are amazed. A lot of people call it a phenomenon, as strange and unusual.
Even old friends are still shocked when they see Bob's power on display.
Oh, very good, very good.
May 18th, 1980.
Oh, that's Mount St. Helens.
Nerve gas attack in Tokyo subway.
March 20th, 95.
Correct.
Yeah.
Princess Diana's wedding.
July 29th, 81. It was a Wednesday.
It may seem that Bob just has a gift for remembering trivia, but there's much more to his incredible talent. He can remember nearly every single moment from every single day of his life.
I threw a bowl of soup on the ceiling on March 13th, 75. Sometimes when they think you're lying, they think you're making it up.
But every fact Bob pulls from his mind is correct. His memory is somehow perfect.
When's my birthday?
November 8th.
What's the year?
68.
What day of the week was it?
Friday.
What were you doing that day?
I was at a football game watching Beaver Falls play Hopewell. Beaver Falls got beat, I think 28-7.
Bob is the best friend to have because he always remembers your birthday. He remembers your anniversary. You also remember stuff that we did that I completely forgot. We've been working for a long time, and he'll call me up and like, 10 years ago, Nancy, we were on a plane to New York to do this story. And I'm like, 10 years ago? Yeah, we were, weren't we?
Well, usually anniversaries, I'll do it for that. If it's, you know, oh, by the way, November 8th, November 2nd, July 11th.
Oh, very good, very good. So it is cool having a friend, but it's not something that's always in your face, you know? I mean, you're very stealth about your ability.
Well, that's not my experience, because I watch football with him, so every time we watch a game, he'll say, remember that game 3 years ago when someone said this? And I'm just like, I don't remember yesterday. Like, what are you talking about? The ability to remember detail from games and things that happened in games. And I just realized, and you know, because I I just think of you as a buddy. I think, God, my memory's terrible. I don't remember that at all. How come I don't remember that? And it's
Unbelievable though it seems, Bob remembers every detail of every experience he's ever had.
It's a little unnerving.
Sometimes I even amaze myself when I remember mundane things about when I got a haircut or what I had for lunch on a certain day. A lot of people are like, they look at you and just totally amazed.
But how's this possible? We all know our memory is far from complete. Words and names stick on the tips of our tongues, to say nothing of the inconsequential details of daily life.
May 1st. Let's go back May 1st. 10 years.
What was I? Well, May 1st, 91, I was wrapping up a job at Pacific State University. That was a Tuesday, and that was the NFL draft.
Yeah, that's usually going to be around draft day.
Yeah. And then May 1st, 81, I was house sitting in Laurel Canyon for this woman named Autumn Brown. May 1st, 71 was a Saturday. Oh, and I was back east visiting. I went out drinking for the first time as a 21-year-old in a bar. It was a Saturday, you know, and I was, let's see your ID. Yeah, here it is, pal, I'm 21, you know. So it was like only 3 days after my 21st birthday.
Incredibly, Bob is not the only person with a perfect memory. He is part of an exclusive club. Around 20 people worldwide have what scientists now call super autobiographical memory, the ability to remember every single day of their lives.
Yeah, the amazing part to me sometimes is I can remember something so clearly, and then I go, wow, that was 41 years ago. I'm not sure how it works. It came natural to me.
A man with a super memory that can remember the tiniest detail from every part of his life. Now, that's impressive. But he's not the only one. You see, I've got some tricks of the trade myself. For instance, I've forgotten where I put my phone, and to stimulate my memory, I use another phone to call it. And then I listen. And then I simply head towards the source of the sound, and I should find it in the last place I was doing something important. Okay, I know it's in here now. Oh, come on. Yeah, no. Ah, you see, it works every time. Hello? The ice cream is in the refrigerator.
So what explains Bob Petrella's incredible gift? Could the rest of us have this superpower?
We all have this capacity.
A Californian man has an incredible gift. He is able to remember every detail of every day of his life. Does he possess a kind of superpower?
When I first heard about this idea that didn't smell right to me.
Gary Marcus is a cognitive scientist. He believes people with super memory might not be so super after all.
I think what's really happening in this syndrome is that people are really spending a lot of time studying their own lives. People might try to remember the past because they want to hold on to it. It's not necessarily voluntary. Most of us, if we're interested in something, don't obsess over it. I think one thing that often happens in this syndrome is people are particularly interested in the details of their own lives. Not everybody is, so I think my life is interesting, but not so interesting that I spend a lot of time thinking about what happened to me in the past. I'm usually focused on what's going to happen next rather than what happened in the past. But some people are particularly interested, just like people might be interested in genealogy, or some people are interested in sports facts because they like sports. When I was a kid, I paid a lot of attention to baseball statistics because that's what I liked. Everybody has different things that they like, and some of us spend more time than others trying to actually remember those things.
So is supermemory just a form of obsession? To find out, Marcus spent time with other people who also claim they have it.
I think that people who have studied this phenomena have focused on what the people who have the phenomena are good at. But with the person that I tested that had this kind of syndrome, I kind of focused on some things that I thought they might be bad at, and indeed were.
When given standard memory tests like recalling lists of words, Marcus found people with so-called supermemory did no better than anyone else.
I think we as a species are worried that we're being replaced by machines. They're probably worried with good reason, because machines do have better memory. So when you find a person that at least looks a little bit like they have memory as good as a machine, maybe it makes us feel better about ourselves. I mean, the reality is, in the long term, no human's ever going to match the memory of a machine. The idea of photographic memory is a myth, and there's no human being that really has the level of control over their memory that a computer does. People with superior autobiographical memory can get really good at memorizing the details of their own lives, but it doesn't extend to everything. If they're not interested in it, they're not going to remember it.
So has Bob simply chosen to obsessively memorize his entire life? Not everyone is convinced. Dr. James McGaugh was the first psychologist to study supermemory.
The most surprising thing about this ability to me is what it surprises everybody. The fact that it can be done at all. If I should ask anybody what they did yesterday, then most people could run through the day yesterday pretty easily. And even the day before, if they think about it, they could run through. And that is not unlike what these people are able to do, except they can do it for every day of their life. So the question is, why is it that these subjects can do it for all days, and the rest of it can only do for 1 or 2 days with any reliability, aside from remembering special days and special events, because we all remember birthdays and weddings and funerals and automobile accidents and things of that kind.
After interviewing more than a dozen people with supermemory, he's convinced they're not merely obsessive.
One of our subjects made this very clear when somebody suggested that all that she does is sit around and re-rehearse all of her information. And she said, let me get this straight. I have a full-time job and I have a life, and I'm supposed to be sitting around re-rehearsing all of those experiences. Highly unlikely.
McGaugh feels that people like Bob are a real phenomena with memories way, way beyond that of even the best minds.
An average person can learn to do some memory tricks. There are individuals who have memorized the number pi out to 30,000 places. But that type of ability is restricted to that kind of information. People with superior autobiographical memory capture their daily experiences, and it doesn't really make much difference what kind of information it is. They just hold it.
But if it's not an obsession, how else would they remember their lives in such detail? McGaugh is working on an incredible theory.
One possibility is that we all store all this information about all of our experiences in our brain someplace. We all have this capacity, and they are able to tap this capacity in ways that we can't.
But how come people like Bob are able to do this and the rest of us can't?
We're beginning to find that there are some regions of the brains of our subjects who have this strong memory that are larger than the same regions in control subjects of the same age and sex.
It's believed part of the brain, called the caudate nuclei, is 7 times larger in people with supermemory. Could this somehow explain Bob's gift?
If the human brain is capable of doing that, that tells us that the human brain has this amazing capacity. There's something really important here, something unique and something important.
Do supermemorizers have turbocharged brains, or is there another answer to this mystery of the mind?
And I say, okay, and I see the year, and I see the month, and then I choose in.
A man has an amazing ability. He can remember almost every moment from every day of his life. But how? Dr. Mary Spiller is a psychologist at the University of East London. She believes supermemory could be explained by a medical condition called synesthesia.
Synesthesia is probably best thought of as a crossing of the senses. So someone with synesthesia, when they hear music, they may see colours, or when they hear words, they might have tastes. So for example, the word tomorrow might taste like bacon, the word computer might taste like ice cream, the letter F might be a bright pink colour, number 5 could be a blue colour. And we think that it's probably a hereditary condition, so people with synesthesia typically might have other members of the family, might also have synesthesia, their father, their grandmother might have it. Research is currently looking to see what genes are associated with synesthesia.
It's an amazing concept, but how could it result in supermemory? Dr. Spiller believes people like Bob may have a rare form of the condition called time-space synesthesia.
People with time-space synesthesia see time. For example, someone may think of the months of the year as being located in a circle around their body. So January could be here, and then February, March, April, May, and so on around their body. And this can work for years as well.
Could the ability to see time allow people to keep their memories perfectly organized?
If you ask the synesthete, where is this particular Monday in 1978, they always know where in space that moment in time is. Almost as if they're looking it up in a filing cabinet. This gives people with time-space synesthesia an advantage when it comes to remembering when things happened.
Sure enough, when people with supermemory are asked to remember an event, they speak like they're seeing it.
And I see where May 1st is. I see the year, and I see the month, and then it cues into the day. And I say, okay.
Could this be proof that Bob and others with supermemory have some form of time-space synesthesia?
I think it's definitely possible that other individuals with highly superior autobiographical memory could have time-space synesthesia. Having a 3D sense of time could potentially have huge benefits for someone when storing memories.
Does the ability to see time explain Bob's near-total recall? Or is it because he has a slightly different brain than the rest of us? Or are people with supermemory such fans of their own lives they can't stand to forget a minute of it? Weird or what?
I gave him a choice.
You know, it was my birthday the other day. As you can see, I got some really great presents. The problem is with this newfangled packaging. It's a miracle you can get them out. Hang on. This should do the job. Yeah. Oh, well, at least I got it open. But do miracles, even small ones, have a rational explanation? Or are they gifts from a divine and superior power? Or are they something else?
In 1993, Julie Spahn was living a happy life with her children and husband, Greg. But one August night, her life was suddenly ripped apart.
We were having a dinner, and suddenly Julie sat down, and I heard a cracking sound like a broken baseball bat, and saw her head fall to the table.
In a horrible freak accident, Julie had smashed her head on a shelf behind her seat.
And that's the last time I saw my wife for many years, as far as the Julie I knew.
I fractured the temporal bone in the back of my head, and which led to a significant brain bleed.
It's a very serious injury. In that moment, Julie's world turned upside down.
For the next 13 years, to put it bluntly, my life was pure hell. I literally had headaches every single day. I had visual problems. I couldn't walk. I couldn't sleep.
Julie visited some of the best doctors and specialists in the world, but they were unanimous. Julie's brain injury would leave her in excruciating pain for the rest of her life.
I lived at my lowest point. Part of me was terrified for my life.
But then one afternoon, in 2008, Julie sees a TV show featuring a controversial faith healer. Immediately, she knows something phenomenal is happening.
It was just incredible. I just had a really distinct peace come about me. And I thought, I really want to go see this man.
The faith healer is Ohio-based anesthesiologist Dr. Issam Nema. He claims to heal terminal illnesses through prayer. 2 months after seeing him on TV, Julie decides to meet him.
And when Dr. Nemi walked in, I started feeling a great deal of warmth in my lower back. And I'm automatically thinking, okay, wait a minute. What can be happening already?
Could the power of Dr. Nema's prayer really be having an effect on Julie?
The life came back into her eyes that had been gone for all these years, and I just saw a total transformation in all aspects of muscle tone and color and warmth and just life. It was really amazing.
Incredibly, Julie's pain is gone. The headaches disappear. Her vision comes back. She can move normally again.
And I said, I don't think I need this cane anymore. And I proceeded to walk right out to the car and get in the car all by myself, which I couldn't do before. It was obvious something major had happened.
Her doctors can't explain her recovery, but Julie has no doubts.
I definitely feel like I received a miracle. There is no other explanation for it.
But Julie is far from alone. Thousands claim that Nema's prayers have healed them.
The Lord took the pain from me, relieved me of it.
I had my own personal miracle.
From cancer to multiple sclerosis, it appears no disease, ailment, or condition is too powerful for Nema's healing powers. As word spreads, people travel from all over the world to attend his services. But what's happening to people like Julie? Are they really experiencing miracles at the hands of a faith healer? Or is their recovery an incredible demonstration of the power of the mind?
Is it psychological? Well, of course it's psychological.
An Ohio doctor claims to cure terminal diseases through prayer. Is he really a miracle worker? Gilbert Ross is the medical director of the American Council on Science and Health. Being a skeptic is part of his job.
Merely because a patient undergoes a miraculous recovery after seeing a faith healer in no way means that the faith healer had any actual active role in the improvement.
Ross has a more rational explanation. He believes the power of healing comes from the extraordinary power of the human mind.
The successful faith healing is entirely the result of the placebo effect. It's purely dependent upon the patient's belief that the faith healing is effective.
The placebo effect is a recognized medical phenomenon. People who believe they are getting treated get better. Incredibly, in some clinical trials, placebos have proven more effective than surgery.
If you give the patient a jar of sugar pills and you encourage them to believe that it's some sort of medication that will help them, you can provoke a placebo response, which may have some actual beneficial effect. Also, you'll be avoiding any potential for side effects or complications from giving the patient any sort of active medication. Now, the downside of that, and there's a very strong case to be made, is that this is unethical. That a doctor who gives a patient a medication, including a sugar pill as a placebo, knowing that it's inactive, and yet not telling the patient that, is lying to the patient. And whatever the good intentions of that act are, it's unethical on its face.
Nobody knows exactly how it is that placebos can be so powerful, but it's accepted that the mind has awesome healing abilities and that just believing in a cure is a powerful medicine.
The placebo effect is real in that a certain percentage of patients will feel better just from the intervention. Is it psychological? Well, of course it's psychological if you're not administering an active ingredient, but that doesn't mean that it's not real, and it doesn't mean that it's not biochemical or physiological either. The psyche is an extremely powerful force, and the brain does indeed manufacture neurohumoral factors that come into play in the body's metabolism. This is well known. I mean, the antidepressant pills, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, act on brain chemicals. So we know very well that mood and affect and behavior are to some extent chemical based. So why shouldn't a psychological factor generate chemicals that also help patients to feel better?
So can this phenomena explain Dr. Nema's success? Could faith healing be a placebo that cures only because people believe?
Patients who have strong beliefs in spirituality, including religion, would be more receptive to all sorts of placebo effects, including faith healing. It has to do with some kind of ritual and the patient's sincere belief that what they're going through with the faith healer is going to help them.
Can the success stories of faith healers like Dr. Nema be explained by medical mind over matter?
If this was just placebo effect, if it was just temporary, you would find a handful of stories. You have hundreds, you have thousands.
Christian radio host Trapper Jack Keller has no doubt that Dr. Nema is performing bona fide miracles, something he's witnessed firsthand.
I have retinitis pigmentosa. I'm legally blind. It's a degenerative retinal disease. But twice in the 11 years I've known Dr. Nemi, my vision's been fully restored. Both amazing, dramatic moments that certainly got my attention. I haven't been able to see in the dark since I was 13. And I get up at 2:30 in the morning to do my radio show, and I actually woke up before the alarm went off. And I get up and I just suddenly realize I can see everything. I can see the dresser, I see the chair, I see the table, the lamp, the fan. I can see everything. And I'm looking for the light source. How can I see these things? It's pitch black, but where's the light source? And there was no light source. It lasted about 60 seconds, and then the blackness came back. But for me, a beautiful sign of things to come. And it's my belief that it will come back when it most serves God.
But how can someone perform these cures? Where does Dr. Nema's healing power come from?
He's not doing the healing. He takes no credit for it. God does it all. But he gets to be the spectator. He gets to watch it happen. He's the connector.
So how does it work? What does Dr. Nema do at his services?
Something happens, and it happens over and over again, thousands of times over. I've seen people with MS. I've seen people with blindness. People who have been told they're going to die of cancer. Suddenly, literally, in the blink of an eye, the tumor's gone.
For Keller, Dr. Nema's healings are part of a tradition as old as Christianity itself.
The healing stories are written about in the Bible. You take it back to Jesus' time. And then the apostles were healing. And you realize that it's always been there. Absolutely, there are so many stories about miraculous healings from the apostles. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
But why Dr. Nema? Why is it that he has the gift and not anyone else?
I believe Dr. Nemi was put on this earth to help people find their way to God. And God gave him that extra portion of faith. And that faith is being utilized beautifully. Miracles are happening to get your attention.
This is an incredible story, but is it just that? A story? Do faith healers hold the power to heal the sick or the dying in the palm of their hands? Do they possess something that science cannot identify, something beyond this world? Or are they less than angels?
Is Dr. Nema performing modern-day miracles? Should we take faith healers seriously?
Faith healers are either knowing or unconscious frauds.
Thousands of seriously ill people report being cured at the hands of a faith healer. Some say it's a miracle. Others think it's all simply the power of suggestion.
Faith healers are either knowing or unconscious frauds, that they use various conscious tricks to lead people to believe that they've been healed when they have not been healed.
Terrence Hines is a professor of psychology at Pace University in New York. He takes a rational approach to Dr. Nema's success stories.
The patient's own belief that they're going to be cured, I think, certainly plays a role. Getting people excited so that they won't feel pain through perhaps endorphin release is another trick. Endorphins are the body's natural painkillers. They're released under situations of high stress and arousal. So the patient will, in fact, believe, getting it correctly, that they've been cured.
Hines has spent time undercover investigating faith healers. he found that in some cases, they relied on trickery.
We went undercover at a faith healing meeting held in Brooklyn, New York. And about halfway through the healing session, an elderly gentleman was brought up on stage in a wheelchair. The faith healer laid his hands on this gentleman in the wheelchair and bade him walk. And this gentleman got out of his wheelchair, walked up and down the stage to great applause. It was a miracle. But in fact, one of the other members of the team had noticed this gentleman walk into the meeting hall under his own power earlier in the performance. As he neared the stage, one of the faith healer's assistants walked up to him and said, "Sir, would you like a wheelchair?" So this gentleman sits in the wheelchair. 45 minutes later, he finds himself brought up on stage and asked to walk. Well, he can walk. And he doesn't have the power to grab the microphone from the healer and say, "Well, but I walked in here by myself." Thus, a miracle is performed. At the end of the meeting, the faith healer did something that I find reprehensible. He said, "Even if you haven't been called up tonight, you're all cured. You go home, you throw away that medicine. You don't need your insulin anymore. You don't need that heart medicine. You've been cured by Dr. Jesus. Throw that medicine away." That's disgraceful.
But why would some faith healers set out to dupe people? According to Hines, it's a profitable game.
All faith healers that I've come across don't charge admission to their services. It's free. But during the service, they certainly ask for donations. At the faith healing meeting I went to, I became a volunteer usher, and I was given a collection bucket, yay big. And I thought, they're crazy if they're going to get this thing filled with money. I was the crazy one. I was pushing the $50, $100 bills and $20 bills down into the bucket. I think I probably cleared about $6,000. Now, there were 12 ushers. 12 times 6 is $72,000 taken out of that community in one night. I would call it a license to steal. Because at least in the United States, since they are a religious entity, they are exempt from any and all taxes. So there's no income tax on this money. So yes, it's a license to steal. And at least in the United States, they are probably not, in fact, doing anything illegal. And I'm not sure they should be. I'm not sure I could, not being a lawyer, could draft a law that would be constitutional and make it illegal.
Hines believes it's easy to hoodwink people into believing they've been cured. To prove it, he set up a demonstration of the power of suggestion.
So we have an actor who will play a doctor, a healer, and one of the gimmicks that he has is a neural stimulator. The patient will be told this will reduce their pain.
In fact, the neurostimulator is a classic placebo, a prop that does nothing.
And what we expect to find is that a number of people, not everybody, but a number of people will say, "My God, my pain's really gone. I can feel that."
The first volunteer reports a pain in her ankle. Our fake doctor assures her he can help.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it on. I want you to keep breathing, and when I turn it on, you're gonna feel the energy coming out through your head, okay? Here we go. Do you feel the difference that this is making already?
Yeah, it's relaxing.
Phenomenal, look at that. She's moving it already, right?
Yeah. Didn't see how it would work, but actually, like, I had a pain like right at the top of my foot, and now I couldn't even like bend it, but now it seems to be better. Like, I can move it. It doesn't hurt as bad anymore.
Hines' theory seems to prove correct as volunteer after volunteer are easily deceived by the fake doctor. So much so, he feels it might have been a profitable day.
The people who reported a positive change probably would have given it a donation. Not a huge amount, because again, they didn't come prepared for that, but yes, I suspect a donation could have been wrung from them.
So are faith healers con men who prey on the weak and vulnerable? Or can healers like Dr. Nema channel science-defying miracles into ailing bodies? Or is it simply that our own minds are so medically potent that people like Julie can heal themselves with the power of belief? Weird. Or what? So there we have it. 3 stories exploring the untapped power of the human mind. A woman's paranormal vision helps solve a murder. Can horrific crimes be solved by psychic powers? A Californian man can remember nearly every moment from every day of his life. Can we all one day have total recall? And a faith healer cures terminal illnesses through prayer. Is it a modern-day miracle or an awesome demonstration of mind over matter? You decide.
Join me again next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird or what? You know, I've been around for a while. I've met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. You'd think that there wasn't much that could take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories and science and things that amaze and confound me every single day. Incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer, and others just defy logic.
Do animals have abilities beyond our comprehension? In Germany, an octopus correctly predicts multiple winners in the Soccer World Cup.
Never expect him to predict everything right.
Are sea creatures psychic? In Scotland, over 50 dogs mysteriously plunged to their death from the same bridge, leaving scientists baffled.
Feet just left the ground and they were straight over.
Are dogs suicidal? Or is a sinister force at play? And in Oklahoma, an ordinary house cat makes a 2,200-kilometer journey to find its owner.
It never entered my mind that he had come by himself.
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it. You know, I'm fascinated by the animal kingdom. These incredible creatures that we share the planet with. But how much do we really know about them? Well, quite a lot, actually. Take the moose, for instance. He's the largest of the deer family. He has 32 teeth and 27 pairs of chromosomes, compared with 23 in humans. Or the dolphin. He sleeps with one eye open, lives up to 40 years, and has a bigger brain than a monkey. And quite a few friends of mine in Hollywood. And then there's the sheep. He's just stupid. But what about those animals we're not so familiar with, like this guy? Huh? An octopus. Well, we know he has 3 hearts, no bones, and blue blood. But here's something you might not know. He's psychic.
June 13th, 2010. As Germany gears up for the long-awaited World Cup Soccer Championships, an aquarium in the town of Oberhausen is preparing to launch a unique publicity stunt. The aquarium will use its resident octopus named Paul to try and pick the winners of each match Germany competes in. Oliver Valenciak is a curator at Sea Life.
We started to do the predictions with Paul just to entertain our visitors and to get some regional press.
The idea is simple. There are 2 plexiglass boxes marked with the opposing team's flags. Each box contains a live mussel, Paul's favorite treat. All the octopus has to do is lift the lid to get at the food inside.
We put the 2 boxes into the tank, and Paul had to decide which mussel he will eat, and this team will win.
World Cup fever runs high in Germany, where huge sums are bet on the outcome. But at Sea Life, no one is expecting much from Paul, who's never shown any particular talent for anything.
Octopuses are quite fantastic creatures of the sea, and it's very funny to work with them because they interact with the keepers. It's very different from fish, for example. They can also interact, but not as an octopus, because they spit on you or they play with your feeding stick or whatever. When I saw Paul, it was a very cute octopus, a nice one, but not that different from any other octopus I already met.
On the day of Paul's first prediction, there's little interest in the story.
There was very low attention from the media, and it was just a few photographs from the regional press.
Oliver's not even sure if the octopus, which has never been trained to perform tricks, will even take part.
The game against Australia was just to see if Paul is working like we want him to work.
To Oliver's surprise, not only does Paul eagerly participate, he correctly predicts the winning team, Germany.
He just had a lot of luck.
But then something happens which makes Oliver question everything about sea creatures. Paul makes another correct prediction, and another. And with each one, word spreads about the octopus that seems to know which team will win before the match is even played.
The staff recognized that there's something special was happening.
By the time Germany faces off in a much anticipated match against England, Paul has become a media sensation.
Also, the international press wanted to have interviews. The Washington Post had an article about Paul.
Weirdly, Paul is apparently aware of the attention he's getting. He even seems to enjoy it.
When the first reporters came in front of the tank, he started to play with the reporters, so he really recognized it, and it seemed that he also had some fun.
But nothing prepares Oliver for what happens next. Paul keeps making correct predictions as Germany beats England and Ghana and Argentina. Incredibly, he's predicted 5 games out of 5 without a single error. Aquarium staff are stunned. They can't understand how a creature with a brain the size of a walnut can beat the best bookies in the world.
There is no scientific explanation for it.
But not everybody is pleased with Paul. Fans on losing teams blame the octopus for their defeat and call for him to be cooked and eaten.
The first death threats he got were when he picked the German against Argentina.
Paul gets in even more hot water when he dares to predict that his home team, Germany, would be beaten by Spain. But he's right again. And by the time the finals roll around, media interest in Paul has reached a fever pitch.
You can imagine 150 reporters and live broadcasts in front of the tank, and you are there with the boxes and think, oh God, do anything. I don't care what you do, but do anything, please.
700 million people watch the game between Spain and the Netherlands. Paul makes his final and most important prediction, eating the mussel in the box marked Spain.
This was, I would say, the most thrilling prediction.
Paul is right again. Even now, Oliver is still mystified by Paul's achievements.
There were thousands of animals doing predictions during the 2010 championship, but Paul was the only one having all 8 games right. When the World Cup was over, we decided that Paul retires. He don't have to do any more predictions, and unfortunately he died in October 2010 because he was old age. But we decided to cremate him and to put his ash in an urn so that everybody who comes to Sea Life Oberhausen can still see a memorial.
Calamari. Oh, I'm sorry. This is awesome, isn't it? I mean, if an octopus can predict the winners of soccer games, just imagine what else they can do. Now, this guy's name is Jeff. Jeff, pick the winning numbers of the lottery. Come on, Jeff, get the winning numbers of the lottery. Jeff gets a little shy, okay? So one more time. What numbers are going to win the lottery? Okay. See you at dinner.
How did an octopus make so many correct predictions? Is this evidence these creatures can see into the future? Dr. Jennifer Mather of the University of Lethbridge has been studying octopus behavior for over 30 years.
Octopuses are very intelligent animals. They're lots of fun because they're trying to solve every puzzle you give them.
She doesn't think Paul has the ability to see into the future, let alone predict the outcome of a human sports event.
The octopus doesn't have the faintest idea what a soccer match is and why everybody's excited about the World Cup.
Dr. Mather thinks the truth is the animal is simply figuring out the best way to get dinner.
This octopus, I'm sure, was taken from the wild, and it has to learn new ways to get food, and what it's doing is scoping us out and figuring out how to get the best it can out of the situation.
Even more revealing, Dr. Mather believes Paul wasn't even looking at the flags.
One of the things that people don't realize about octopuses is they're colorblind. So I think the German flag is red and black, and that really didn't matter to the octopus.
So if Paul wasn't responding to the flags, how did he know which box to choose? Dr. Mather is convinced that he was using a sensory ability unique to octopuses. Through chemical receptors in his tentacles, Paul could literally smell the muscles inside the boxes before he even opened them.
Octopuses are very sensitive to chemical cues. It would have known that there was a reward in each of those boxes.
That would explain a bizarre quirk of Paul's predictions, that for most of the matches, he chose the box on the right, which also happened to be the winning team.
What happens in captivity is that the octopus ends up doing what it's getting rewarded for. So it may go, well, yeah, I got rewarded there, so I keep going there.
But if Paul knew he could get a mussel from the right-hand box, why did he sometimes choose the one on the left?
It's entirely possible it just got bored and thought, well, I know there's one on the other side. Why don't I go over to the other side and see what's over there? I think he would have switched because he knew there was food in both places. And he would have switched because he thought, wait a minute, that's not the way the world really works. I know there's food there, but there should be food in the other place too. Yeah, let me go and see. Octopuses turn out to be difficult for researchers who want to study learning and memory because they're forever doing what the researchers describe as sampling the unrewarded location, going to see what's happening someplace else. They're like us, they're curious, they're explorers.
So if we believe Dr. Mather, Paul's predictions were a win-win situation, at least for his stomach. But that still doesn't explain his astonishing success. What is Paul's secret to beating the odds?
Sort of knew that there was some hidden mechanism in there.
An octopus predicts the outcome of World Cup soccer matches. Is it psychic or just playing along to get a meal? Dr. Ray Ducrayu is a professor of statistics at the University of Toronto and a keen soccer fan.
So when I first heard about Paul the octopus, I was not floored. I sort of knew that there was some hidden mechanism in there. What I like about statistics is that you take this big block of data that is hiding inside a great mystery or a great story, and you try to unravel the block and get to the truth.
Dr. Crayu claims that he has unlocked the secret of Paul's success. It all comes down to probability, the mathematical calculation of whether or not something is likely to happen.
To pick the winner of a match correctly, it's the same as flipping a coin and calling it ahead of time. So it's 50% chance of calling it right.
But Paul correctly predicted 8 matches in a row. The odds must be huge, mustn't they? To find out, Dr. Crayu uses a probability tree to represent each of the choices Paul made.
It helps to go game by game. So game 1, you have 2 possible outcomes, a correct or a wrong guess. Game 2 comes, you have, again, 2 possible outcomes, correct, wrong, correct, wrong. Now, game 3, same story.
He comes up with a surprising result.
The chance for this octopus to actually predict all 8 games is about 1 in 256. Pretty small odds if we think of this was done at random.
So, were Paul's accomplishments less impressive than they seemed? Perhaps. And there's another crucial element in play. Dr. Crayu says Paul wasn't the only animal predicting the World Cup. In fact, there were hundreds of creatures all over the world trying to do the same thing.
We often hear about animal oracles, but we also have to understand that there are many others who have tried to be animal oracles and failed.
With so many animals trying to pick winners, believes Dr. Crayu, one of them is bound to get it right.
It's simply because it has to happen. By luck, by chance. It has to happen once. In a blue moon, but it can happen.
The bottom line for Dr. Crayu?
If we're gonna remember Paul for anything, we should remember him for being a very lucky octopus.
So was it all just a fluke? Or could there be another explanation? Author and animal rescuer Steve Kotler has been writing about the cognitive power of animals for nearly 2 decades.
I'm surrounded by almost 30 animals every day, and the one thing that I know for sure is we don't know anything about animals.
He doesn't rule out the possibility that Paul the octopus was an oracle.
I think we have to keep an open mind about the possibilities of Paul the octopus, like we have to keep an open mind about the capabilities of all animals. Every time we've said there's an ability that animals don't have. They don't have tool use, they don't have language, they can't grieve, they don't love. All these things are things we used to believe animals couldn't do at all, and we now know are absolutely fact.
Kotler points to recent discoveries that have shed new light on the animal kingdom.
A really great example of an ability animals have that we don't have and we can't even begin to fathom comes from elephants.
In the early 1980s, researchers discovered elephants are capable of emitting ultra-low frequency calls.
Their stomachs make subsonic, low-frequency sounds. These sounds travel for hundreds of miles, and elephants can communicate this way. They seem to hear these sounds with sensors in their feet.
Kotler suspects something similar was at work at the aquarium, with Paul actually reading the minds of the people around him.
I think there were a lot of people in that room who wanted him to select the mussel with the German flag on it. And I think he was picking up on that vibe and reading something.
Could it be that Paul can not only see into the future, but he's telepathic as well?
We should always come at the natural world with a sense of mystery. We should never, ever, ever come at it with attitudes of expertise or really any kind of solid ground in our knowledge, because the one thing that we've learned scientifically over the past couple of hundred years is every time we think we know something, this theory is right, this is absolutely how it's going to be, 20 years later it's been proved wrong. So trying to draw a box around animals and saying they have these abilities, they don't have these abilities, is ridiculous. What you have in this particular case is an octopus who successfully predicted the future 8 times in a row. We have no possible way of understanding the octopi universe. We don't have 8 arms, we don't live under the sea, we don't squirt ink. We have no idea what it's like to do those things, and that leads to all kinds of wondrous possibilities.
Did Paul use precognition to pick World Cup winners? Did he just get lucky? Or was he just looking for food like any old octopus? Whatever the truth, this story is weird. Or what?
Ever wonder what your pet is thinking? Well, we all know, don't we? I mean, we think we do. We talk to them and they respond. Watch. Fluffy, you want to eat some cookies? Hey, want to go for a walk? Fluffy Wuffy. Love Bill? Do you love Bill? That's all. See? He thinks about food, walkies, and he's thinking about how much he loves me. That's all it takes to make him happy. But not every dog is like Fluffy. Others have secrets and thoughts so deep and dark, they're worth dying for. Did you say something?
March 2005, Dumbarton, Scotland. Donna Cooper is on an outing with her daughter and the family dog, Ben. They're exploring a 19th century country estate on the outskirts of town.
We'd been out for about 2 hours, and then we were just finishing our walk when we came up the stairs and came to the bridge.
Donna doesn't want Emma wandering off, especially near the bridge. But, busy with her daughter, Donna takes her eyes off the dog.
I'm always aware of bridges, but generally you just say to the dog, come or heel, and they're generally right at your heel and they don't go anywhere.
Suddenly, Ben rushes onto the bridge before Donna can react. Donna is stunned by what happens next.
His feet just left the ground and he was straight over. His feet didn't even touch the bridge, he was just up and over. There was no chance of anybody being able to catch him or stop him. It just happened so quickly.
Donna goes down into the 50-foot gorge to retrieve the badly injured animal.
He'd landed at the very bottom of the bridge. He'd broken his jaw, his legs, his ribs, his back. So unfortunately there was nothing else we could do for him.
She still doesn't understand why the dog jumped.
He wasn't a working dog or anything, but he was very intelligent and we had him properly trained. No, he was a very happy dog. I clearly don't understand why he done it.
What makes Ben's death even more puzzling is the fact that it wasn't the first. Since the 1950s, over 50 dogs have leapt to their deaths from the Overton Bridge. Owners, vets, and scientists are baffled by these incidents.
I think everybody has their theories, everybody has their stories and their ideas. It is strange that many other dogs have done it as well.
My goodness, this is awful. Dogs taking their own lives. Doggy depression. Hound harry-carry. What's going on here? I mean, they didn't even leave a suicide note. Seriously, this has got to stop. We have to help, but how? There's only one way. We have to get to the bottom of this and find out where these deeply troubled minds went wrong. Tell me about your puppyhood. But therapy is good for you.
Why did Ben die? Do canines possess complex emotions that make them want to end it all?
Various things can cause a dog to be depressed.
A series of dogs mysteriously die on a bridge in a Scottish village. Did they deliberately kill themselves? Psychologist Dr. Stanley Coren has been studying human-animal relationships for over 4 decades.
I don't think a dog is capable of deciding to commit suicide. He might kill himself through accident, but not through deliberate planning.
According to Dr. Coren, suicide goes against every canine instinct.
The most powerful drive that they have is toward life. An animal caught in a trap will chew his own foot off and continue to live.
Dr. Coren believes an adult dog has a mental age equivalent to a 2-year-old human child.
They have happiness, they have joy, they have sadness, they have fear, they have anger, they have surprise, that sort of thing. They don't have the complex learned emotions, guilt, shame, embarrassment, those sorts of things.
But scientific studies have shown that dogs can experience a form of depression.
Various things can cause a dog to be depressed. Things like being socially isolated. They're very social animals. Things like loss, like the loss of a well-loved owner. Any of those things can cause a dog to be depressed. The symptoms of depression in a dog are pretty much the same symptoms of depression that we see in human beings. The dog basically acts blah. He doesn't move very much. He seems to act mopey. He doesn't seem interested in any of the things which used to catch his interest before. He acts more like a limp dish rag than the playful puppy that you used to know before. Part of the reason we know that this is depression in the sense that psychologists talk about it is that the dog's condition responds to exactly the same kinds of medications that we use for humans when they're depressed. So, for example, if your dog is showing signs of depression, your veterinarian is apt to prescribe basically a beef-flavored version of Prozac, which is made by one of the major companies. And your dog will respond in the same way that a human being will respond.
But could canine depression lead to suicide?
The only reason why suicide might be considered to be a reasonable option is if you have the feeling that my current condition is awful and it's unlikely to change in the future. And the only way I can control this is by ending this existence. Dogs don't think that way.
So if dogs can't commit suicide, why did Ben jump off the bridge? Could there be some other explanation? Psychic investigator Archibald Lowry has a monstrous theory about the Scottish dog's suicides. He's convinced Overton Bridge is the scene of a heinous crime with origins in the distant past. He thinks the clues to the mystery are still there.
Psychic memories, all memories, are locked onto the place of the Earth's surface that they were generated.
Lowry and his partner, Francis Ryan, believe dark, supernatural forces may be behind the deaths. For the first time, they will try to communicate with the ghosts of Overton Bridge and find out what happened.
I said, Francis, let's see if we can pick up anything, because nobody else is coming up with any decent ideas at all. I know that if there was something psychic there, Francis would come across it as she walked up and down. She wasn't coming across it as she walked up and down, but I noticed that she swerved each time we passed an Ingo, and I said, Francis, do you realise that each time you come down, you swerve towards one of the Ingos? And she said, I didn't realise that. I said, well, this time, let's go straight to that Ingo and have a look at it. Get yourself into trance and have a think as to what memories this part of the ground holds.
On the bridge, Francis goes into a psychic trance.
I feel a mist starting to come forward.
Yeah, good.
It's coming in a haze at the moment. I'm not getting a full figure. I feel like a haze. It's like feeling energy coming in.
Almost immediately, she has a chilling vision.
She said, I'm seeing a big black horse.
I feel he's coming forward in a different way. Yes.
On the horse, there is a rider. He's a young man.
Francis sees a young man named Edward, who lived in Overton Estate over a century ago. But on this day, he was on a fox hunt that took him across Overton Bridge.
Oh, very strong-willed, very powerful.
Edward is blowing his hunting horn, and the dogs are hearing that and following it as dogs do.
But there's something special about the horn. The pitch is so high, only dogs can hear it.
And it's giving out a sound which we can't hear. We humans can't hear because it's designed to make a sound for dogs, to get dogs to follow the hunt.
Suddenly, one of the dogs goes berserk and attacks the young man's horse, causing it to rear up in panic.
He's given the feeling of tumbling and falling.
Tumbling, yeah.
Tumbling and falling.
Yeah, tumbling, falling, yeah.
Oh, it seems to be his back area.
Yeah. You were falling backwards then. That's why I'm supporting you.
Seems to be his back area, the back and the head.
You feel his head swinging? Yeah.
Edward is thrown and killed in the fall.
He slides back down the horse, breaking his back on the corner of that bridge. So cruelly, so quickly, cut down in his prime because of the action of a dog.
He hates the dogs.
Lowry's seance on Overton Bridge has led him to a startling conclusion.
Edward and his horse are still there.
Lowry believes Edward's ghost is not only alive and well, he's still blowing into the hunting horn that only dogs can hear. But now, he's using it for a diabolical purpose, to lure dogs off the bridge.
Are these dogs somehow hearing this blowing of this thing to follow him and leap to their deaths? And you ask him once again if he would stop letting the dogs hear that horn. He's unwilling, is he?
No.
Is a vengeful ghost causing dogs to jump off a Scottish bridge? Animal psychologist Dr. David Sands agrees something is luring the dogs off Overton Bridge, but it's not supernatural.
It's not suicide, it's death by misadventure.
He's convinced the animals are being led not by a ghostly horn, but by one of the most powerful sensory organs in nature, their noses.
With a sense of smell perhaps hundreds of thousand times more powerful than ours, once a dog picks up a trail, it's going to be motivated to follow it and find out where it's leading to.
What smell could possibly cause a dog to jump off a 50-foot bridge? Dr. Sands is certain there is only one, An odor so powerful and overwhelming, canines simply can't resist it. The mink, a creature dogs instinctively hunt.
The mink has an anal gland that produces a sort of scent that is so strong you'd probably smell it from about half a mile away. I set up a series of experiments where we used the various scents of the animals that were detected around the bridge, so mice, squirrel and mink. We soaked cloths, put them into jars. I set up an experiment where we would release dogs onto a field and see which scent they went to first. And in almost every case, out of 20-odd dogs, they all headed straight for the mink.
It's an interesting theory. Minks were farmed here until the 1960s. The doctor thinks their wild relatives are still around, and dogs know it.
Minks are territorial, they leave scents, dominant males leaving the scent for other animals to pick up.
But if dogs want to chase mink, why are they leaping off the bridge instead of running around the side? Dr. Sands visited Overton Bridge to find out.
But once I got to the bridge, I sort of got down on my hands and knees and thought about it from a dog's point of view.
He quickly discovered the answer. Dogs can't see over the wall. They have no way of knowing they're on a bridge.
Because of the height of the stone wall on the bridge, they're seeing a wall, they're not seeing a 50-foot drop on the other side.
It's a convincing explanation. Canine curiosity and a powerful hunting instinct literally drives dogs over the edge.
A recipe of cues and signals and scents that have caused the dog to behave quite naturally, but for the end result to be disastrous.
Did the hounds of Dumbarton jump to their deaths because of the scent of wild mink? Were they lured off the bridge by a ghostly dog eater? Or were they so depressed they couldn't go on living? Weird. Or what? A house cat journeys 2,200 kilometers through 5 states to track down its owner.
Just some way he knew where we were.
You know, it's wonderful these days. You can travel with your pet, take them wherever you go on planes, ships. They're totally portable. But not all pets get to travel. Sometimes their owners have to leave them behind, and that's when heartbreak can occur. Luckily, we don't have that problem, do we, honey? You ready? We're gonna go.
June 1951, Anderson, California. The Woods family is getting ready to move to Oklahoma, a grueling 2,200-kilometer car trip to the east. Rita Colander is their daughter. She is 8 years old at the time.
All of my father's family and all of my mother's family lived in the same county in Oklahoma. And I think that we moved because they missed their families.
But as they finish packing for their move, there's a problem. Rita's beloved cat, Sugar.
Sugar and I loved each other. We played together constantly. He would follow me everywhere I went.
However, Sugar is terrified of cars.
Sugar just got wild in the car and would not stay.
Rita's father finally decides they have to leave Sugar behind.
I was heartbroken. We left the cat with a neighbor family, the Spans. I remember seeing Susan, my friend, standing in our yard holding Sugar when we drove out the driveway. And there was an empty feeling.
The family moves to a dairy farm in Oklahoma with a host of feral barn cats. As time passes, Rita finds things to take her mind off of Sugar.
I got a pony, and we got a dairy and had cattle and things that I wasn't familiar with. I think that helped me get over the loss of Sugar.
August 1952, 14 months after leaving California, Rita and her mother, Ellen, are working in the barn when something unexpected happens.
We were feeding the cows in the barn while my daddy milked. And this cat, it startled her. He just purred. It was so obvious that he was a different cat than any we had there on the farm. The others were wild. We didn't have any other friendly cats.
And the friendliness of the cat isn't the only thing. Ellen notices the emaciated animal bears an uncanny resemblance to Sugar, the pet they left behind.
I was so excited because I thought by some miracle somebody had brought Sugar or we'd gotten him there some way.
But Ellen pours cold water on Rita's excitement.
My parents were very quick to say, it can't be Sugar, but it's a lot like him, looks a lot like him.
Two months later, Ellen receives a letter from their neighbors in California. It's mostly gossip about their old neighborhood, but it also contains a bombshell. Her precious cat, Sugar, is missing.
It said, Sugar disappeared 2 weeks after you moved. And we have never found him, never found a trace of him.
Rita and her mother are stunned. They begin to consider the impossible. If Sugar is no longer in California, could the new barn cat be Rita's beloved pet?
I really did not stop to think through what it took for that cat to cross the deserts and the mountains and the perils that he must have come through. I was too much interested in the fact that I had my cat back.
Did Sugar make a fantastic journey? In addition to deserts and mountains, he would have had to cross rivers, forests, salt flats, over 2,200 kilometers in 5 different states. Not to mention encounters with deadly predators like rattlesnakes, coyotes, and eagles. How?
He had to be a pretty good little hunter, and he had to be pretty smart little cat in order to make that trip, to know and to understand where he was going. Just some way he knew where we were.
Had Sugar returned, Rita's mother decides to settle the matter once and for all. A test only the real Sugar would pass.
When Sugar was a kitten, there was a little bone that stuck out on the left hip. When you would pet him, you would find you could feel that bone, and it's very unusual. It's not something you find in normal cats.
If the farm cat has this distinctive deformity, it could prove it's Sugar.
She felt the bone, and there it was, the deformity. So we knew at that point that had to be Sugar. How likely would you be to find a cat of the same color and the same size to have the same deformity?
The Woods family is dumbfounded. How did Sugar find them?
I don't have a clue in the world how a cat would make that journey, how to follow someone to a place they've never been. That's a mystery to me. It took Sugar 14 months from the time he left California to show up at the dairy farm in Oklahoma. It's a complete amazement to me, and always has been, how this could actually happen and how animals do this type of thing. I don't understand it. I think he was trying to come back to where he belonged, back to the family he belonged in.
How did a house cat cross 5 states to a place it had never been before? Do animals possess navigational skills we are yet to comprehend?
We certainly know that animals have sensory abilities that we don't have.
A house cat named Sugar travels 2,200 kilometers to track down his owner. How could a domestic pet find its way over such vast distances? Behavioral neurobiologist Dr. Vern Bingman thinks the answer lies in something science has just begun to understand.
We certainly know that animals have sensory abilities that we don't have. So birds can detect the Earth's magnetic field, we can't. Sharks can detect electric fields, we can't. Bats hear high-frequency sounds, we can't.
Another is the ability to navigate. Dr. Bingman believes it's a skill domestic cats inherited from their wild cousins.
If you look at lions in the African savanna, or even tigers in some Indian jungle, they have very large home ranges and they navigate quite well. Domestic cats are capable of carrying out these kinds of navigational computations to a place they've never been to before.
Dr. Bingman thinks Sugar was also using a phenomenon found in her favorite snack, birds.
Birds in general can take advantage of the stars, the Earth's magnetic field, the sun, to kind of establish compass bearings, to discriminate what we would call north, south, east, and west.
Not only do birds possess an internal compass, they have something else that's extraordinary. A GPS knows that lets them smell their way to their destination.
Homing pigeons can use atmospheric odors to navigate over hundreds of kilometers.
Dr. Bingman believes Sugar could have used these same scent cues to navigate over vast distances.
Somehow the animal from thousands of kilometers away is able to detect the smell and follow a gradient based on that smell to the home.
Did Sugar detect her owner's smell from over 2,000 kilometers away? Dr. Bingman isn't surprised. He's convinced there's still much to learn about animals' innate talents.
The last 10, 15 years has seen an enormous growth among scientists looking at issues that would be unthinkable 30, 40 years ago, issues related to what we call animal cognition and animal intelligence. Okay, exploring the capacity of animals to represent social relationships, the capacity of animals to communicate, the capacity of animals to learn and remember and problem solve. There's a mild revolution going on where scientists are legitimately looking at the remarkable cognitive abilities of animals. I've studied animal behavior for long enough to recognize that nothing is impossible.
Do animals have super senses? Are the best tracker dogs actually cats? Or is this amazing story just an incredible coincidence? Professor of Applied Cognition, Dr. Graham Pike, doesn't believe cats have super sniffers. He thinks there's a much simpler explanation.
It's not a particularly cat-like behavior to travel such a long distance to somewhere it's never been before.
He believes the cat that showed up in Oklahoma wasn't Sugar. It's all just a case of mistaken identity.
As a cat lover, I'd love to believe this story was true. Everything I know about how human memory works suggests to me that this wasn't the same cat.
Dr. Pike has studied cases of mistaken identity for almost 2 decades. He believes memory is unreliable and easily influenced by suggestion.
Human memory isn't as accurate as we like to think. Expectations have a very powerful effect on memory. If you expect something to happen, then you tend to remember it happening. It's just the way memory works.
But the cat in Oklahoma had the same bone deformity as Sugar. How could that be? Dr. Pike believes Rita's mother got it wrong and misremembered the shape of Sugar's bone defect.
Hip bone deformity occurs in many cats. There are many cats that have that. It wasn't that Sugar the cat had this hip bone deformity and no other cat did.
Dr. Pike is convinced there was another even more powerful factor influencing Rita's mother. She wanted the cat to be Sugar.
If somebody really wants to believe something's true, it's actually not that difficult to convince yourself it is true. What's far more likely is that the people, once they'd moved, saw a cat that was similar to the one they left behind and became convinced that it was their cat. And in fact, their memories helped them with that.
The bottom line, says Dr. Pike, is that the family wanted a cat they could love like Sugar.
If you really want to believe that the cat you see in front of you is your own cat, that you feel guilty for leaving your cat behind, that you really want a new cat to love, then certainly you can convince yourself that this is the cat. Your memory will start filling in certain blanks and overlooking certain facts. So if the cat was a bit dissimilar to the one previously, it might be a bit thinner, it might have a few more scratches, then obviously what you do is you say to yourself, well, it's just travelled 1,500 miles, it's been through a really rough time, it's a year later, it's a bit older, therefore it would look different. But you don't have to do that consciously. Unconsciously, if you want to believe something, your mind does begin to tell a story that's the one you want to hear.
So, was the Oklahoma sugar an imposter? Then how do we account for the dozens of other cases just like Sugar's?
Cats live in a world that we consider paranormal.
A house cat makes an epic cross-country journey to find its owners. How did he do it? Veterinarian Myrna Milani is an animal psychologist.
My personal feeling is that the human-animal bond is deeply, deeply entrenched, probably right up there with gravity in terms of its influence. I think one of the things we forget with all animals, but especially cats, is that they normally live in a world that we consider paranormal. They are always hearing things we can't hear. They are always seeing things we can't see. They are always smelling things we can't smell. And we don't think about it. We see ourselves up here at the top of the pyramid and go, well, yeah, if you really work hard, you'll be able to see the world the way we do. And I'm like, man, I would love to see the world the way a cat does.
Dr. Milani believes the mystery can only be understood by using the weirdest branch of science known to man, quantum physics. She's convinced the bond between Rita and her cat is like the mysterious force that enables some of the smallest particles in the universe to somehow align their spin, even when separated by millions of kilometers.
Einstein referred to that as spooky action at a distance, because this doesn't fit in physics. It can't happen, but it does. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're dealing with.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Now, wait just a minute. I've been doing this show for a long time now, and it seems every unexplainable mystery can be explained by quantum physics. And frankly, no matter how many times they tell me, I still don't get it. Spooky action? What the heck is that? Joined together by electrons? Can't they just lay it out in simple terms for me? Oh.
Dr. Milani thinks this form of subatomic communication lies at the heart of Sugar's journey.
Sugar made it to her new home, to her owners, because she had a strong, clear bond with those people as a clear signal. Think about a radio signal. Somehow the cat picks up on that and follows them.
Do cats navigate using super senses? Are they invisibly linked to their owners for eternity? Or did Sugar simply fool everyone? Weird, or what? So there we have it. Stories of extraordinary animal powers from around the world. In Germany, an octopus predicts the winners of World Cup soccer. Can a sea creature tell the future? In Scotland, dogs inexplicably throw themselves off a bridge. Do canines commit suicide? And in Oklahoma, a cat travels thousands of kilometers to track down his owners. Are felines guided by super senses? Are these stories proof that animals have extraordinary powers? Can we dismiss their incredible exploits? You decide.
Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird or what. You know, I've been around for a while. I've met some interesting people. Done some crazy things. You'd think that there wasn't much that could take me by surprise. You'd be wrong. The world is full of stories, and Science and things that amaze and confound me every single day. Incredible mysteries that keep me awake at night. Some I can answer, and others just defy logic.
Can we see into the future? In Ohio, a man predicts a horrific plane crash before it happens. Can nightmares become reality?
Nothing is beyond the realm of possibility.
In Washington State, a child's intuition saves his family from a deadly volcanic eruption.
I said, if we're over there, we'd be dead now.
Can our subconscious predict natural disasters? And in California, a man foretells the Hurricane Katrina disaster with uncanny accuracy.
I could have helped many people.
Is he the new Nostradamus?
Yeah, it's a weird world, and I love it. Dreams. We all have them, right? Oh, I'm not talking about our hopes and ambitions. I mean those fantastic journeys we have in our sleep every night when our subconscious minds take us to places where anything's possible. But what exactly are dreams? Are they reflections of our inner souls? And if so, what are they trying to tell us? And more importantly, should we listen to them? Some dreams are so powerful, they seem real until you wake up the next morning. But what if one day you woke up to find your dream was not only real, it killed 273 people?
Cincinnati, Ohio, 1979. David Booth is the office manager of a car rental agency at Cincinnati Airport, and a low-key kind of guy, according to his best friend, Wayne Creamer.
Well, Dave kept to himself most of the time, and I didn't see him really getting out and meeting people and doing things.
But on May 15th, David's life takes a dark turn. He begins having extreme nightmares.
He had this dream of an airplane taking off and an engine falling off and the plane crashing in flames, killing everybody.
The dream is eerily real.
It was a disturbing dream. And then the next night, he had the same dream again, and that was strange.
The dreadful details are seared into David's memory. A silver American Airlines plane with one engine in the tail takes off from a busy airport. But then disaster strikes. The jet flips upside down and plummets to Earth. It narrowly misses a low building before slamming into an open field.
Let's say you have the same dream night after night of some catastrophe. The first night, fine, that's a night terror. The second night, wow, what's this?
But the nightmare doesn't stop. It continues night after night. David has a terrifying realization. His visions are more than just night terrors.
He felt that it was prophecy for him to see that over and over like that. There's a reason why I'm getting these dreams. I've got to do something.
Finally, David decides to warn the authorities. He contacts Jack Barker, the public affairs officer with the Federal Aviation Administration.
David Booth sounded perfectly rational, saying he wasn't, crazy like some people sound. He was upset about the dream, but other than that, it was calm. He was the first person I ever talked to, in fact, the only person I ever talked to, who talked about an accident before it happened.
David's glad someone is listening, but his relief is short-lived.
He was a pleasant person to talk to, but there was nothing to take seriously. No city, no flight number, nothing relating directly to the accident other than a description of what happened.
David's information isn't enough for the FAA to take action. But it's not over for David. The nightmare returns again and again, each night more vivid than the last. And by May 25th, 1979, David is desperate.
When it persisted, then he became alarmed and said, I've got to do something. He called the FAA again.
He says, it's just very disturbing. I don't know what to do. I said, well, I don't either. The only thing that could have been done would be to ground American Airlines. And, I mean, you're going to ground American Airlines because somebody had a dream? I think not.
Just a few hours later at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, David's nightmare becomes a tragic reality.
Just exactly as he had envisioned it. Flight 191 suddenly crashed. The engine fell off the plane. It was the worst airplane crash that they'd had.
273 people killed with no survivors. Booth can't believe it. His dream has played out in real life.
Dave immediately heard about it from all the news flashes because it was on the television and the radio.
At the FAA, the horrific news reaches Jack Barker.
When the accident occurred, which was later that same day he called a second time, I got very busy answering press questions about the accident, which was my normal job. And I was into it for about 30 or 40 minutes or so, and then my secretary stepped in and she says, the guy from Cincinnati that called. Everything he said was in detail. And I said, yeah, that's pretty much what he described. Silver American Airlines airplane with an engine in the tail, a DC-10, crashed right after takeoff. Crashes inverted like this, about halfway, in an open field after it passes over a low building. Well, that's what happened.
According to Barker, Booth's premonition is the only one the FAA ever recorded before an incident took place.
You see, I've been involved in a lot of strange incidents, accidents, hijackings, etc. This thing with David Booth is probably the strangest of anything I ever handled.
The tragedy would haunt David Booth until he died in 2011.
Dave never really discussed his feelings after the crash. If the word had been able to get out as to what airport was involved, it could have saved a lot of lives.
This is a tragedy on so many levels, not only for the people that died, but for Jack Barker and David Booth. There seems to be no question that David clearly saw, not once, but many times, the exact details of an airline crash in his dreams, weeks before the actual event took place. Surely this is undeniable evidence of a genuine premonition. David Booth saw into the future. But how on earth did he do it?
Did David Booth predict the worst air accident in U.S. history? Can dreams reveal the future? Physician Larry Dossey has studied premonitions for over 30 years. He's convinced David's vision was real.
If you add up all of the things that he got right, he identified it as a silver airplane. He identified the actual carrier. He essentially identified the make of the plane. He identified the fact that it would crash shortly after takeoff, inverted, which happened, in a field, which also proved to be true.
Dr. Dossey not only thinks predictive dreams are commonplace, but they're an ancient biological mechanism unique to humans.
Most people who do serious work in this field of premonitions think that this ability probably developed very early on in the evolution of human beings. You can imagine if our ancestors were able to know ahead of time that there was a lion in the bush, they could take measures to avoid it and be more likely to survive and procreate. It is likely that this survival mechanism might have been passed on through succeeding generations because it had what biologists call survival value.
Dr. Dossey believes it's significant David's premonition came to him during sleep.
Well, the more dramatic premonitions tend to occur in dreams. If you're conscious, you're going to get into incessant arguments with yourself. Can this happen? Should it happen? Am I hallucinating? But when we're asleep, we don't have those sorts of prohibitions.
But if humans can foresee events, why don't we hear about them more often?
We don't really know how common these dream premonitions are because there's a taboo on reporting them. Besides that, you would want to know if you were going to report this to the FAA, what's the likelihood that they'd do anything about it? It's virtually zero, as was the case in David Booth's experience with the FAA. So I think most people who have these dreams just say to themselves, what's the use? I think this needs to be reversed. I'll bet you David Booth was not the only person who had vivid dream of the crash of that flight.
Did David Booth use a hidden evolutionary tool to foretell the crash of Flight 191? Or is the explanation more sinister?
Nothing is beyond the realm of possibility.
A man sees an air disaster in his dreams before it happens. Did he predict the future? Richard Syrett is host of The Conspiracy Show.
I don't discount the very real possibility that there are such people that have this gift of premonition or extrasensory perception. But I don't believe, in this case, David Booth had this prophecy or this premonition.
He agrees David Booth knew about the accident before it happened, but not because he saw it in his dreams. Syrett thinks David is part of a deadly CIA conspiracy.
David Booth was an asset with an intelligence group as part of what's known as the counterintelligence program, which has been in operation by the FBI and the CIA for probably 50, 60, 70 years.
The CIA wanted to establish David Booth as a psychic in the eyes of the public.
What the counterintelligence programs do is to create someone as a straw man, someone that people can believe in, listen to, pay attention to.
But why? To distract attention from what was really going on. Syrett believes the CIA sabotaged Flight 191 in order to kill one of its passengers.
It's a very convenient, a very efficient way to take somebody out because you have the cover story of this air disaster. Who would believe that the CIA or some intelligence group would kill innocent victims in order to take out one person aboard that plane? If you look at the passenger list of Flight 191, who do we have on there? We have a lot of people who belong to book publishers. They're on their way to a major book fair in LA at the time. Hard to say. There could have been someone there, perhaps. Judith Wax, here's another interesting point. Judith Wax, who was a humorist and a writer, she worked for Playboy magazine, among others. And that year, in 1979, she published a book. On page 191 of that book, she expressed her fear of flying. I've been covering conspiracies for nearly 20 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, nothing is beyond the realm of possibility.
We may never know the full truth about David Booth and Flight 191.
You can call it a conspiracy. I simply call it spycraft. This is the way these intelligence groups work.
Are David Booth's dreams just a cover story? Aviation expert David Parker Brown thinks there's nothing mysterious about David Booth's predictions, and that almost anyone could have done the same thing.
Tragedies like airline crashes are something that people dream about quite a bit. They're going to be a little bit fewer that are going to report those, and the fact that one will end up lining up within the history of airliners flying is a chance that's probably going to happen sooner or later.
Parker Brown is convinced every element of David's dreams represent common features of aircraft accidents at the time.
In 1979, when this accident occurred, a little over half of all American jet airliners had a third engine on the tail. And from the early 70s to the late 70s, the DC-10 did not have a stellar safety record, and they were involved in 11 different accidents.
But David Booth also predicted the color of the plane and the time of the crash. How?
Back in 1979, there were quite a few airlines that had silver airline liveries. American Airlines had all their planes painted in silver since the 1930s. And takeoff is one of the most dangerous parts of an airline flight. And so it's most likely that people are going to have a dream about an airliner crashing during takeoff. Since we haven't seen another case like this where it's been substantiated that he had the dream beforehand since 1979, makes it very unlikely that this was just anything more than a coincidence.
So if the dream merely described a typical airline crash, does that mean David's prediction was a completely random occurrence? Not entirely. David did get one thing right.
The aircraft took off and rolled over and crashed into a field. The rollover is not very common in accidents. For David Booth, this is one piece of evidence that does come up to seem a little odd, and the fact that he did see that probably is one reason why we're talking about this today.
Were David Booth's dreams just dreams? Or was he part of a sinister CIA propaganda program? Or did he really see into the future after all? Where to what? A 7-year-old warns his father of an imminent disaster.
It was something that felt evil.
Have you ever had a gut feeling? Unfortunately, these days, most of mine are dietary-based, but you know what I'm talking about. Those feelings we get in the pit of our stomachs when something isn't quite right. It might be something small, like crossing a road or avoiding a stranger. Or it might be something huge. So huge, it could move an entire mountain.
May 17th, 1980, the Cascade Mountains, Washington State. Aspiring nature photographer Steve Terrell is on his first assignment to capture the growing volcanic activity on Mount St. Helens. And Steve's editor is looking for spectacular pictures.
He said, first assignment I want you to do is Mount St. Helens. I go, what do you mean? He said, something's gonna happen because that mountain, it's bulging 3 feet a day. So something's gotta give.
But after 6 uneventful weekends staking out the mountain, Steve's hopes are beginning to fade.
I have to admit, I was getting tired. I was getting sick of looking at a mountain. So I said, this is gonna be the last weekend.
With him on this final trip is his 7-year-old son, Steve Jr.
I remember traveling up there with my dad a lot. He was hoping something was gonna happen. But none of us knew the magnitude it was gonna happen.
Their destination is Spirit Lake, just 5 kilometers from the bulging north face of the mountain, well inside the danger zone. The area has been cordoned off by state authorities, but Steve has found a way around the roadblocks.
He had met a logger up there. My dad had spent numerous days up there traveling back roads with this logger, showing him how to get around all the roadblocks.
Finally, they arrive, and the view is perfect.
I thought, oh, this is gonna be gorgeous. The morning light's gonna hit this, it's gonna be stunning.
But just as Steve is setting up camp, he notices something is wrong with his son. Steve Jr. has suddenly fallen ill, but it's like nothing he's ever felt before.
It was something that felt evil. I call it gut instinct because that's what I call it when something doesn't feel right. This was just a gut instinct times a million. I just told my dad, Dad, let's leave. I don't want to be here. I didn't like it. It was like evil.
He said, I don't want to stay here. I don't want it. I don't like this.
I literally started crying and throwing a little fit.
Unable to calm his son, Steve is left with no choice. He has to move camp.
He wasn't happy at all, I must say. He packed up the tent and he was cursing and mad, and we left it.
They drive to Yale Lake, on the opposite side of the volcano.
When we got down to Yale Lake, everything felt fine. But I remember being kind of like distraught that my dad was so upset.
Early the next morning, Steve is packing up his camera gear. Suddenly, he hears a terrifying rumble. Mount St. Helens erupts with a force 1,500 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It sends a massive plume of hot ash 20 kilometers into the sky.
I turned around and like, oh, the mountain's erupting. And I am now screaming at my son, get your ass out of bed. I said, Mount St. Helens is erupting?
It was just massive. It looked like a mountain on top of a mountain.
Wasting no time, Steve picks up his camera and starts shooting. He's getting historic stuff. But he can't help but think how much better the view was at Spirit Lake. And he lets his son know.
I could have been over there photographing at Spirit Lake. You've made me lose $1 million shot. I am so damn I'm so mad. I'm so mad.
He was cussing and everything else. He was very upset. I can't believe that we're not up there.
Steve decides to head back over to Spirit Lake to get a better angle on the eruption. But they get some devastating news.
Spirit Lake has been completely decimated following the massive eruption of Mount St. Helens.
I turned on the radio, and they said, we have reports. First reports coming in is Spirit Lake is gone.
The area where Steve and his son first set up camp has been utterly destroyed, submerged by the largest landslide ever recorded.
It buried Spirit Lake with 30 feet of mud and ash. And I'm thinking, my God.
Steve comes to a sobering realization. Had Steve Jr. not convinced him to leave, they would both be dead, along with the 57 people who died in the eruption.
I looked down at my son. I said, how did you know? I go, Stevie, you got us out of there. I said, if we were over there, we'd be dead now.
My dad gave me the biggest hug he's ever gave me. And he said that Spirit Lake was destroyed. And we would have been dead.
I don't know. It was like, I still to this day don't know what happened, why he told us to get out of there, why he didn't want to be there. So the rest of the day, we stayed up, hid from everybody, photographed all from these ridges and West Point Peak. We ended up at West Point Peak, a really nice view there. Photographed all day long. So I had my 4x5, had a little 35 millimeter. And a side note, I don't know if he told you this or not, I like to brag about my son. I had my 4x5 set up when I was photographing and stuff, you know, the mountain. And I was trying to teach him how to photo. I want him to follow my steps, you know, so he asked me if he could use a small camera, you know, the little camera. I said, sure, you can use it, you know, and I put it on a tripod for him and stuff. And so he's dilly-dallying out there, you know, shooting and stuff. And he's got this camera, you know, and he's got it on a tripod. He goes, Dad, come here, look at this. And I look at it, oh boy. So he's got the camera on a vertical, but it's crooked. Now, this is important to tell you. It was crooked. So I straightened it out a little bit for him. I said, see that horizon line? You got to straighten that out a little bit. Long story short, turned in all the film. I'm just getting really fast, turning in all the film. And that little son of a gun, he, at 7.5 years old, got a cover of a magazine.
To this day, Steve Jr. can't explain how he knew they were in mortal danger.
It was like a higher power or something. I don't know. I've never experienced it again, but that was just something that I can't explain it.
Was Steve Jr.'s gut feeling a genuine premonition? Or was his intuition just a lucky break? Clairvoyant and nature guide Laura Eisenhower says chance had nothing to do with it. She's convinced Steve Jr. did something truly extraordinary that day.
Steve Jr. was communicating with nature very much in a sense like an animal. He was used to the mountain, he understood the energies. That's how he knew that the eruption was going to happen.
Can it be? Did the boy actually tap into some animalistic sixth sense?
Animals naturally respond to impending disaster. They flee, they go to hilltops. Very often in disasters, there aren't a lot of animals that die. There are a lot of humans that die. Animals know exactly what to do. Steve Jr., because he had spent time on the mountain, was already in touch with the energies. So if something was shifting, he could immediately notice.
How does a child summon this animal ability? Simple, says Eisenhower. Just listen to nature.
Nature is always trying to protect us if we're able to listen. It wants to guide us and protect us, and if we're tuned into it, we're always on a safe course.
But where did this amazing power come from? The answer could lie in the blueprint of every human life.
We all have this ability. It's in our DNA. Nature is always trying to communicate with humans in the sense that we are children of the earth. Receiving communication from nature is just as natural as feeling hungry. We can't escape the fact that we are in the natural world, even if we're in cities. I myself was in wilderness expedition leadership training, and I was in incredible communication with nature. One can tell where to camp, where not to camp, how to communicate with animals in order to protect themselves, because we communicate based on senses, intuition, and energy, not verbal communication. And so, absolutely, humans can communicate with nature. I once swam with a dolphin pod that took me so far away from the boat, and I asked them to take me back to the boat because the slipstream is what enables you to go fast with the dolphins. And instead of continuing on, they turned around and took me all the way back to the boat, and all I sent was a message to get me back, or else I wouldn't have been able to get back. We find that with domestic animals, of course, there's always a deep connection and relationship and communication, and birds and all animals. And as we evolve, we need to be in communication with nature because there's going to be a lot of shifts and earth changes.
If this is the case, why aren't stories like Steve Jr.'s more common?
We've lost a certain level of connection that forces us to adapt to a human way rather than a natural way of being. Our cities aren't in compatibility with nature, and nature wants to communicate to us that it's, in a sense, our mother, and it requires a certain level of respect.
Nature, it's awesome, isn't it? I mean, can it communicate with us? I'm sure of it.
Ouch, you clumsy fool.
Oh, sorry. I mean, I love my trees. I nurture them, I respect them.
You never water us. That's why we're dying.
Oh, stop. I give them love and affection.
Get your hands off, weirdo.
Will you quit it? Mwah.
Oh my God, I'm gonna throw up.
I'm sorry.
Did Steve Jr. tap into some long-dormant animal sense? Did he somehow pick up warning signals Mount St. Helens was about to erupt? Or is there a more rational explanation?
I don't believe that the volcano was speaking directly to Steve Jr.
A 7-year-old boy is overpowered by a feeling near Mount St. Helens, just in time to save himself and his father from a killer volcano.
Spirit Lake has been completely decimated.
Are premonitions real? Psychologist Dr. Michael Brustein doesn't think Steve Jr. knew the eruption was going to happen.
People can't predict the future, unfortunately. It would be great if they could, but that's not the case.
In his eyes, something extraordinary did happen that day, but it had nothing to do with Steve Jr. possessing extrasensory abilities.
The gut feeling that Steve Terrell says he had about the campsite, it does not provide any evidence of a capacity to read into the future. What it says is that he was anxious about something. Something at the site scared him, and people after the fact are making the association that he predicted something happened.
For Dr. Brustein, unlocking the mystery starts with Steve Jr.'s gut feeling.
Gut feelings exist, but they're not supernatural. Gut feelings are a physical response that someone has after they perceive something is dangerous. The heart starts racing, the breathing gets faster, the blood gets distributed away from the stomach into some other major organs, so you get that nauseous feeling. It's getting the body prepared for that flight or fight response to deal with that danger. It's that simple.
Was Steve Jr.'s reaction just a normal physical response to some danger? What could have scared him?
I think he was scared about something that he saw at the site. Kids are very volatile and they get upset about many different things. It could have been a spider, it could have been a rock, but I think the anxiety was not about what he thought was going to happen in the future, but something that might have happened at the site right then and there.
Did Steve Jr. simply see something in the woods? Or was he recalling some earlier childhood trauma? Maybe. But why is Steve Jr. and so many others convinced he knew the volcano was about to erupt?
I think people are drawn to supernatural explanations to understand things is because it brings a sense of comfort. It makes us think that there's something out there besides us that's functioning in the world. And people like that comfort. To a certain extent, it's gives people the idea that maybe if we leave this earth, there's something else out there that could be there for us. And I think people really like to believe that. It's really nice to think that maybe there's something out there. Maybe there's another universe, or maybe there's some sort of magical thing happening. And it gives people hope and about their future.
Was it pure chance that Steve Jr. had a gut reaction to the mountain? Is precognition a figment of our imagination? Clinical hypnotherapist Paul Arand thinks the answer lies with reincarnation.
Whether we realize it or not, we are all reincarnated beings. Reincarnation is a process the soul goes through of going into and out of various bodies. Our past life experiences influence the decisions we make, how we live our life, even our emotions.
Arand's idea is that the boy sensed the eruption before it happened, long before.
Often at the death scene in the past life, the soul makes a choice, a decision about something to do next time they come. So someone I worked with recently that has an anxiety disorder, who was killed in the past life because she felt she didn't pay enough attention to the dangerous situation around her, came back with a determination to always be super alert, hypervigilant. And that was having a really negative impact on her life here now, because she lives in a relatively safe environment. Steve Jr. died in a volcanic explosion in his past life, and his soul came in with great determination to do it different this time. Not only survive, but to save his father's life. If someone died in the volcanic explosion in Pompeii, that soul would then reincarnate with an intention to avoid that sort of thing or to do something different next time around, either to assist someone they were unable to assist or to avoid the disaster altogether.
Recalling the deadly past life lesson, Steve Jr. wasn't about to make the same mistake twice.
He listened to his intuition. He didn't let his intellect override it or his father's questioning his feelings. He stuck to it and he made that known so that the action was taken that saved his life.
Could Steve Jr. really be a reincarnated soul?
Up until around the age of 7, children have very vivid past life recall. Young people are generally more in touch with their soul or their spiritual self, and they haven't shifted from trusting their intuition into relying solely on their intellect.
Do we learn from our past lives? Or does Mother Nature tell us when disasters are imminent?
Spirit Lake has been completely decimated.
Whatever the truth is, it's weird. What? A man predicts Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, and the Columbia shuttle disaster. Can the man claiming to be the new Nostradamus really foretell the future?
I could have helped many people.
You know, I love astrology, so I'm going to give you a quick lesson in it, so pay close attention. I'm an Aries, first sign of the zodiac, which spans the 0 degree and the 29th degree of the celestial longitude. The sun enters Aries when it reaches the northern vernal equinox around March 21st each year. Got it so far? Aries represent a strong creative thrust and the traits of competitiveness, impulsiveness, rashness, arrogance, and the instinct to act spontaneously. Ah! It's me, right? See, here's my stars for today. Sometimes events unfold as planned, however, what's least unexpected could prove most worthwhile. Amazing, huh? How do they know this stuff? And should we really take notice? Let me tell you, I think we should.
Pont Saint-Esprit, France, 1965. It's the hometown of Dr. Louis Touré, and the place where a bizarre incident would set his life on a remarkable path. Louis is 15 years old and staying with his grandmother, Rachel de Rollo. In the middle of the night, he's awakened by a sound. Downstairs, he is surprised to see his grandma dressing and disappearing into the dark.
I instinctively knew that there was something I had to investigate.
Louis follows her. At a clearing deep in the woods, he discovers the old lady looking to the heavens through a sextant.
I was mesmerized to look at her.
As Louis comes out of his hiding place, his grandmother has a message for him.
She was telling me the stars are more than dead rock hanging out there for the sake of beauty. God gave us the stars to be used as sign so we may live a more productive life. My grandmother was very spiritual. She was very psychic. And she always told me the connection between the moon and growing vegetables. I was mesmerized to look at her. She pointing out the constellation. Because I was always asking her, what's that? What's this? What is this, Grandma? She was not an astronomer or an astrophysicist. She had no education, but she had a phenomenal intuition. I realized that reading tea leaves and the tarot cards, astrology, it is part of my background. That's how it all started.
It is Louis' initiation into the mysterious world of astrology.
As I grew up and started to investigate the stars in a different level, I realized that in the stars there is a spirit, and this spirit has something that affects the human psyche.
Louis discovers an inspirational book written by a 16th century French sage, Michel de Nostradame, known to the world as Nostradamus.
I was born, like him, in Provence, France, under the same stars. His predictions of the French king dying of an accident, Hitler, and every major news is there for people to translate. And then I couldn't help myself to dig into Nostradamus' work. I literally painted my entire house with symbols of astrology.
Nostradamus' unique method fascinates Louis, known as divine astrology or astropsychology. It combines regular astrology with extrasensory perception.
Astrology is not a pseudoscience. Astrology is a real science. Astropsychology or divine astrology allows you to use what you call the third eye. It takes many, many years of investigation. It is not something that happened overnight. But I was downloaded the entire secrets of the cosmic code.
Learning the secrets of divine astrology has given him incredible powers of prediction.
I have been called the new Nostradamus, the modern day Nostradamus. I have been called CNN before CNN.
Louis begins publishing his own predictions, often highly detailed, but few people pay attention to his prophecies. That is, until June 15th, 2005.
I was on Coast to Coast Radio, which is the biggest radio show that you have in the United States. And I told him to be ready for nature devastating forces that could produce a hurricane that would displace thousands upon thousands of people.
Crucially, Dr. Turi tells listeners the next natural disaster would occur August 29th, 2005. But nobody listened. Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans, killing over 1,800 people and causing $81 billion in damage. It happened on August 29, 2005, exactly as Louis predicted.
Oh my God. I was very upset because I could have allowed all these people to take measures before the hurricane strike. I could have helped many people. They did not see the signs.
But that was no one-off. Louis also predicted the 9/11 attacks, the Columbia shuttle disaster, and other world events with uncanny accuracy.
People start to realize, well, wait a minute, these guys are something real. I teach the spiritual values of those stars. So what happened is we have developed so much technological advance. GPS, we go on the moon, the internet, on the physical level, humanity is up here, but in the spiritual, we are still 2,000 years ago, because the laws of the divine, the face and the tools of God, the ministry of Jesus was not taken care properly. So what I'm trying to do is to bring back the balance between the physical and the spiritual values and help the scientists to think outside of the box, because what you don't see, what you don't hear doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's time to think in a different way, like Einstein said. We have created a huge monster of scientific, rational, logical thought where the gift is gone. And all I'm trying to do is to bring it back to humanity. And I'm gonna do it.
Do the heavens hold the key to our fate? Has Dr. Louis Turi rediscovered a secret method to predict the future? Or is there something else going on? Amateur historian Don Dempler has a radical explanation for Dr. Turi's power.
Astrology can be used to understand the future. That's true. However, Dr. Turi is not the reincarnation of Nostradamus.
So how is Dr. Turi able to make such accurate predictions?
He may have been involved in what we call gray ops which are programs hidden behind Black Ops programs. Black Ops are nuclear secrets, atomic weapons, national security. Gray Ops have to do with preparation for the coming cataclysms.
Depler's theory is that Dr. Turi is seeing the future with his very own eyes. But how?
What he is a person with access to alien technology that allows him to see events in our future.
Depler believes Dr. Turi is using a device codenamed the Looking Glass.
It was supposedly first based at the engine disassembly plant somewhere near Area 51 in Nevada. The Looking Glass is a long tube about 60 feet long, 12 feet in diameter, into which is pumped a lot of different gases. And in the other end of the device was a railgun and a 12-inch thick plate of glass into which the railgun was fired. It's got electromagnetics that spin in opposite directions, and technicians see various future events with this thing.
How did Dr. Turi get access to the Looking Glass? Through a powerful and secret government group known as Majestic 12.
Majestic 12 is the organization that pretty much runs all of the alien-related projects, and they keep that from the public. They maintain the cover-up. Majestic 12 is a party supposedly on the behalf of humanity at alien treaties. The conferences are known as the Tau 9 Treaty Conference for the Preservation of Humanity. They're the people that really run things in our world today. People that run finance, the military, science, medicine, including the intelligence agencies.
It's a controversial theory with global implications. Could it be true? Depler speculates that even though Turi's predictions may have come from a shadowy, classified project, he himself might be doing beneficial work.
The government has a vested interest in the public not learning too much about how things really work because of the panic that could ensue. If they were to tell the public the truth, a lot of people wouldn't be buying 30-year mortgages or even 4-year car notes. The truth is coming out in ways you won't find in the mass media. And in that sense, Dr. Turi is doing a good thing because he is trying to do what he can to help people understand and to prepare them for future cataclysmic events that we're about to undergo.
You know, just about every time there's something weird going on, the poor old CIA gets the blame. But this is something new. The Majestic 12. Who are they? Why are they majestic? And most importantly, are they paying their fair share of taxes? God, I hate cover-ups.
Could the Looking Glass exist? Can we build a machine that can project images of the future? Or is the answer more down to earth?
Anybody can predict the future. The question is, can you do it well?
A man claims he can look into the future. Are prophecies real? Dr. Hansen is a professor of economics at George Mason University. He thinks he knows exactly how Dr. Turi does it.
Anybody can predict the future. The question is, can you do it well? So, I believe Dr. Turi can predict the future. I don't believe he can do it well. So what does it mean to predict something well? Well, first of all, what's one standard? The lowest possible standard of prediction is better than absolute random chance, right? Well, anybody can predict the sun is going to come up the next day better than random chance. In fact, you can predict it 99.999% confidence because, in fact, every day the sun comes right up again on schedule, and we can all predict that. So we can all predict far better than chance. The point is, it's not very hard to do that. To predict well means to predict better than some other source. Interesting sources of predictions are sources that can tell us things that other sources can't tell us very well. That means to predict well, you need to predict more accurately than other sources. So I don't believe that Dr. Turi can predict more accurately than other sources, although I do believe he could predict better than random chance because we can all predict better than random chance. It looks to me like Dr. Turi is taking advantage of his customers.
The professor says Dr. Turi's seemingly accurate predictions aren't cosmic, but the result of something known as selection bias.
Selection bias is where you pick one small set of things out of a bigger set, and you just show me the small set, and you don't show me the bigger set. So, if I'm gonna tell you I'm a great athlete, I'll tell you about the times when I shot from 50 feet away and went right in. I don't tell you about the 50 other times I shot and it didn't go in. Selection bias is telling you about part of, but not all of what happened.
Hansen suspects Dr. Turi's method of publishing his predictions almost guarantees some of them will be correct.
Just picking one point and saying, on February 1st, 2003, I predicted something bad would happen, and then it happened, that's just not very persuasive. Dr. Turi is trying to find the most favorable match with what happened and what he said. They get you to think they know something because they point out their successes without showing you their failures.
So if Dr. Turi could do it, can we?
We're actually in an age of a revolution of using statistics to collect large data sets and make forecasts using sophisticated statistics and computer programs in remarkable ways that people with their intuitions are often much worse at. This is revolutionizing business, it's revolutionizing academia. This is an exciting era of new and more accurate forecasts. It's just a shame to even be distracted by people sort of making up stuff and throwing tea leaves about without them even bothering to collect a track record, because with these big data sets and careful statistical methods, they have shown remarkable ability to forecast a lot of interesting things.
Is Dr. Turi's amazing power of prediction nothing more than a numbers game? Let's find out. Dr. Turi has agreed to demonstrate his ability.
About a week ago, I was asked to make some specific predictions. So I'm going to read them to you and at the same time point out that those predictions came to pass. The first one will be to expect news with earthquake above 6.0. 2 earthquakes took place. One was 6.3 and the other one was 6.2. I mentioned tornado. Today we had devastating tornado that killed people in the United States. I also mentioned to expect scientific news from the cosmos. And today we had the biggest solar flare ever took place. Number 4 was to expect shocking news and very large explosion in the Middle East. Yesterday, over 150 people were killed in an explosion in the Middle East. Out of the 5 predictions that I gave, 4 came to pass. You can investigate, you can check. They all transpired, as I said it would a week ago. And that's what makes the difference between divine information and pure imagination.
Can Dr. Turi really see into the future by deciphering a secret code hidden in the cosmos? Does he have access to an alien telescope? Or is he just playing the law of percentages? Weird or what? So there we have it, 3 stories of uncanny predictions. A man foretells a horrific plane crash in Chicago. Can we harness dreams and discover what's before us? A child saves himself and his father from a volcanic eruption. Can our subconscious predict natural disasters? And a modern-day Nostradamus predicts Hurricane Katrina, 9/11, and the Columbia shuttle disaster. Is he using secret technology to see events before they happen? You decide.
Join me next time for more stories that will undoubtedly be weird, or what?